Now I'm looking at numbers 29, 30 on your Unit 4 study guide. It says algebra, solve each equation below, show all steps. Checking your solution is not required but strongly recommended. So when I see addition, I know that I need to subtract. And if I do it to one side with the equal sign, then I must do it to the other. 4 minus 4 is 0, so now I've isolated my variable of y. And I have to do negative 3 and 2 tenths minus 4, which is like 4 and 0 tenths. I can put my decimal point after. I can copy, change, and when I do that, I realize I have two negatives. And when signs are the same, I add. So 2 plus 0 is 2, 3 plus 4 is 7. Bring my decimal down right here. And I keep the sign, which is negative. So in this case, y is equal to negative 7 and 2 tenths. I can check my solution, or I can estimate my answer. Either way works. I'm going to kind of use a blend of both. If I have about negative 7 plus 4, it's about negative 3. So my answer checks and seems reasonable so that I can go on. On this next one, I've got a negative out front. I'm going to put that negative with my number 8 just so that I make sure that I get rid of the negative when I multiply. So when I see the fraction bar, that tells me divide, and the inverse of divide is multiply. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 8, or multiply both sides by negative 8. These 8s will cancel, and I've isolated n, isolated my variable. And now I'm going to do my division. 8 times 8 is 64. 8 times 8 is 64, plus 6 is 70. There's one decimal after, or one number after this decimal. There's no numbers after this decimal, so that means there's one decimal in my answer. And I know that a positive times a negative is a negative, and so n here is equal to negative 70 and 4 tenths. The next one that I see, I have subtraction. When I see subtraction, I know the inverse of that is to add, so I'm going to add 19 and 2 tenths to both sides. When I do this, negative 19 and 2 tenths and positive 19 and 2 tenths cancel, and I've isolated my variable f. But now I have different signs, 13 and 4 tenths plus 19 and 2 tenths, and when I have different signs, I need to subtract. And I have to subtract my bigger number minus my smaller number, so I'm going to do that now. I'm actually going to rewrite the problem down here so that my bigger number's on top, 19 and 2 tenths. I have to borrow, and 12 minus 4 is 8. 6 minus 3 is 3. And I keep the sign of the higher number, which is positive, so f is equal to 3 and 8 tenths. If I want to know if my answer makes sense, I'll come back here and say, okay, 4 minus about 19 would be about negative 15. 4 minus 19 would be about negative 15. So, I mean, I'm close, but maybe I did something wrong. I did. Down here, when I borrowed from my 9, I should have made this an 8. And 8 minus 3 should be 5. Now let's see if 5 and 8 tenths seems more reasonable. If I have 5 and 8 tenths, that is about 6. And 6 minus 19 is negative 13. So that seems much more reasonable. So you can see here, even as a teacher, how estimating and checking your answer is super duper helpful and beneficial in finding and catching silly mistakes like I did here. On this last one, we see division, and when we see division, we should multiply. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 0 and 2 tenths. And when I do that, these will cancel out, so I've isolated my variable v. The inverse of dividing was multiplying, and so 2 times 8 is 16. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. I've got one number after this decimal and one number after this decimal, which means I have 2 in my answer. So v equals negative 56 hundredths. This is where things are a little bit tricky in terms of trying to divide 0 and 56 hundredths divided by 2 tenths. You might have to do it here. You might also understand, oh, if I move this decimal here and I slide this one over, I can do about 6 divided by 2, and that's about 3, so my answer checks and makes sense. However you want to do that, you can do it long ways as well to check your answer. So here we worked on isolating our variables using inverse operations or opposite operations, add and subtract our inverse, and multiply and divide our inverses. We showed all of our steps, and then we checked our solution using some estimation skills just in our head to make sure that our answers made sense.